We are live. All right. I hope everyone enjoyed that intro. I'm Kevin Hammer.
I'm Chris Barrett.
And I feel a bit out of place right now because usually I say, and we are live, but Chris stole that job from me with the intro. So,
Yeah, guys, just so you know, I created the intro and I just loved it how Kevin always said, and we're live. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. I'm just going to throw that in for the intro.
And right off the bat, we have a comment from the based mother. She says that was lit. Thank you so much. So this is going to be an exciting one. We actually are doing another first outside the intro. We are playing a pre-recorded segment with two amazing men from across the pond. And in this segment, we will be discussing the Supreme Court, the UK Supreme Court ruling regarding what is a woman, basically, right? And the gender sex lie that's been pushed by trans ideology. Now, this is about 50 minutes long, a little under an hour, but don't worry, we will still be here. I'll be watching the comments, and once that segment is done playing, Chris and I will be back live to respond to a couple clips and to respond to your comments. So please check out those comments. Hit those comments up, and we will be back soon. But with no further delay, here we go. Here's our conversation with some amazing men from across the pond. All right. Welcome, everyone, to a very special segment of KC Reacts Live. We are going to be responding to the UK Supreme Court ruling that the legal definition of a woman is based on biological sex. As always, I'm Kevin Hammer.
And I'm Chris Barrett.
And we have some very special guests from across the pond to help us dissect this. We'll have them introduce themselves. Glinner, why don't you go first?
I'm a ex-comedy writer. I was once a very big comedy writer in the UK, but I started talking about women's rights and how gender ideology impacts them, and I was cancelled. And as a result, I haven't written any comedy in about a decade nearly. But I'm going to America soon and hoping to start writing comedy again. But basically, the entire UK establishment basically, disappeared me. And now I think only of revenge.
All right, nice. Mr. Menno, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Right, I'm a content creator, but nowadays when I say that, people think I have an OnlyFans, but that's because when you say YouTuber, it sounds so like kind of old school. It's kind of nice, but then I thought I have to sound a bit more modern, right? I'll go content creator, and then people are like, "Oh, that's what you do," and I'm like, "No, not that." But I've basically been making videos about the gender madness since 2020. I started thinking something was seriously wrong in about 2018, 2019. I spent a good year doing research, and then I just thought I have to say something. Especially from a gay man's perspective. So, and then Ricky Gervais saw one of my videos and says, "That's genius." I'm like, "Yes." And J.K. Rowling says, "I love you, Mr. Menno." So that's great. And I'm also part of the Gay Men's Network, which is a campaign group for gay rights on the basis of sex. So we want to safeguard the rights of gays in a world drunk on gender, basically.
Awesome. Absolutely amazing. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining Chris and I. I mean, this is just awesome because I think Chris and I, as Americans, I'll speak for myself. As an American, I was so impressed by this, because for us Americans, we look at the UK and we see a lot of things that we're like, wow, I feel like my social media would just get me arrested in the UK. At least 75% of it would. But so this was amazing. This is one where we get to look to the UK and be like, oh wow, no, we need to make that happen here. So I was really excited to see your Supreme Court make this ruling, and I was really impressed. And I thought, wow, this is one area where I can't jab at the UK, right?
But Kevin, you the thing about it, and the interesting thing about this case, is it was already the law. They've just made a decision to start implementing it. Basically, we had 10 or 15 years of the biggest legacy gay organization in the UK, Stonewall, lying to all the people it was giving advice to, saying that the law didn't mean biological sex. So what I love about the current administration is that they immediately come in and they said, woman means woman and man means man, which is the law already, you know?
Yeah.
So luckily you in the States, you know, you didn't have to, like, the women behind For Women Scotland, this has been years they've been doing this and trying to get to this stage, you know, but you guys didn't have to. You just voted for the non-lunatic party.
Yeah, pretty much.
Correct.
That is it. And you know, I mean, I've got to say, you know, there are a few things that we have to work out here in the States. But and we do have our own Supreme Court ruling coming up in June that will determine whether it's okay to ban child sex changes. And I do think our Supreme Court's going to go along with it. But we do really need something in law, or at least a court decision, kind of like what you guys have, that makes it totally clear.
Yes,
now,
absolutely. And one thing that's happened. Sorry.
Oh no, I was going to go right ahead. Go right ahead.
It's so important to have this clarified in law unequivocally. We see what's happening in other places like Australia, where they've taken it out of the law. And that's why Giggle versus Tickle went in favor of Mr. Tickle. So for your viewers, that's a bloke who claims he's a woman, wanted to go on a women-only app, got booted off, and basically took the woman to court. And won. Because the judge said a bloke with what I call magical lady feels, if he gets a certificate that says, yes, you're female, then he is absolutely female in the eyes of the law, and women have no legal leg to stand on. And we have the same thing in the Netherlands, where I'm from originally, where the law, like, we have these, like an Equality Act in the Netherlands, where you have these different protected characteristics. What's so good about UK law is you have two separate characteristics, one for sex and one for gender reassignment, you know, which is a very vague concept, but at least they're separate. In the Netherlands, they've bashed them together. So all this gender identity, gender expression, sex characteristic stuff all falls under sex, which means women can't argue and gays can't argue for their rights. We have no grounds to argue on. Yeah. So that's why it was such a relief to have this judgment in the UK.
Right.
Because that's what it's all. It's always about the same thing. It's always about making the language muddy, hard to understand. Like, there was a poll done here a few years ago, and they found out that most people thought that trans women meant females who had transitioned, and trans men meant males who had transitioned, when of course it's the complete opposite. And
it's the same here.
Yeah, a lot of people thought we were arguing that female women shouldn't be allowed to play women's sports. And they're always very careful to say things like trans people to cover up the fact that they're actually only talking about men, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so sinister the way they've done it. It's utterly corrupt and manipulative, you know?
So I want to get into each of your initial reactions.
That doesn't look good, does it?
No, I want to get into each of your initial reactions when the Supreme Court made its ruling. But before we do that, I want to reference one of my favorite reactions, which is, of course, J.K. Rowling. I just love how she triggered so many people with this post right here. Come on. I love it. I love everything about this. I just love it. So I'm going to keep this up as we discuss your guys' initial reactions because, like I said, I love it. I love her for this. Mr. Menno, what was your gut reaction? What was your first reaction when you heard about the ruling?
Well, I was in the room. I was at the Supreme Court, and Graham, you were there as well.
I was, yeah.
We you know, there. So first of all, you're sitting in this really old, beautiful grand sort of room with all this old sort of wood paneling on these wooden benches, and it feels very old and serious. And the judges, you know, they come in, you have to rise, and then nobody can smile or laugh, or, you know, you can't crack a joke. It's really very serious, which is kind of nice. But that's another thing. They told us that you can't whoop or cheer. So as we're sitting there, and then they start talking blah, 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 blah. And then this judge used the term trans woman and referred to them as an oppressed minority. And I just thought, oh, fuck, here we go. It's going to be a replay of what happened in Australia with that Giggle versus Tickle case, because that's how that judge started. And then he says, okay, sex for the purposes of the Equality Act means sex, biological sex. So I was sitting next to this ex-BBC person, and we're kind of looking at each other. And then she scribbles something on a notepad because you can't talk. And she's like, did we just win? And I got my phone and I'm like, fuck yeah! But we didn't know how much we were winning, because he still had to go through all the different points of the judgment. But the first thing that I did, you feel such a sense of relief. But the first thing I did, I looked at Marion and Susan from For Women Scotland, who've been working their ass off for, 6 years, getting to this point, and with plenty of setbacks, and it's been really tough on them. So I watched their reaction, and Susan sort of leant forward a bit, and her shoulders started shaking, and I thought, uh-oh, I hope she holds it together.
Yeah.
So I wasn't feeling happy in the moment, because you can't, as Graham said, you know, you can't celebrate or go crazy. You're still thinking, did I really hear this? Did I get this right? Then I'm looking at them and thinking about
so many years of thinking, well, this is of course going to come down on our side, because this is a rational argument we're making, and their argument is meaningless and bizarre. And yet we keep losing. Sal lost in Australia. Maya Forstater lost her first case. They said her opinions weren't, what was the phrase, Menno?
Worthy of respect in a democratic society.
Worthy of respect in a democratic society. Basic feminism that says women need spaces of their own. Basic feminism. And they said that she wasn't worthy of respect in a democratic society. So she had to appeal, and then they reversed it. But we're so used to that to finally get somewhere where they're actually saying it, you just couldn't take the risk. I think it would have been the most embarrassing thing of my life if I had stood up and gone, yes, and we hadn't actually won. But we did, and we won incredibly conclusively. And, you know, everything we've been saying has been vindicated. You know, my only worry is, like, it's carrying on over here like a kind of zombie movement, you know, with a lot of trade unions and businesses saying they won't apply the law. But, like, you know, I'm trying to find out anyone who says they're not going to apply the law. I'm going to contact their insurers, and I'm going to say, this guy says he's not following the law, but, you know, can you tell him that he has to? You know, I
mean, this is one of the really good things about this judgment is, you know, the era of no debate is blasted to smithereens.
Nice.
That judgment was all over the newspapers the next day, and it's now a huge discussion that's gone mainstream. So all these organizations and all these people who are now saying this Supreme Court judgment is wrong, or we're going to fight against it, they're out in the open now. They can't hide it. And good, like, show yourself, okay? This is what you believe in. That's your position. Good.
Stand up for it.
Stand up out loud, and you can't hide it now. All the politicians, all those activists, all those lobby groups, they can't. You know, there's no two ways about it now. You're either for it or against it, and now it's in the open.
Which, Mr. Menno, let's get into that discussion, because let's just get into the nitty gritty of what this really means, and let's first touch on, obviously, trans, right, in relation to the trans identity. It's more than that, but we'll get into that later. So this is just an AI overview that I screenshotted. It says the UK Supreme Court has ruled that the legal definition of woman in the Equality Act 2010 refers to biological sex assigned at birth, excluding trans women, even those with a gender recognition certificate. Now, I still take issue with the assigned at birth part of that.
Yeah,
but hey,
isn't that just a perfect example of what we were just talking about?
Yes.
Which AI was this? Was this Grok?
It was just a Google. I
ChatGPT?
Googled UK Supreme Court
Google,
ruling.
right.
And yeah.
Yeah, but that's Google. That's Google using trans activist language because it clearly does not agree with the result. You know,
Yeah,
assigned at
because
birth.
no one's assigned sex. That's just utter BS.
And it goes on to, this means trans women are not recognized as women under the Act for the purpose of accessing single-sex spaces and services. Now, Glinner, I'm going to throw it to you because you touched on this earlier, that this was always the law. This is now just pointing to it, saying, no, this is the law, right?
Yeah, and what Stonewall did by using kind of obfuscating language and the very successful tactic of no debate was they made even discussing it outside a polite society, you know, and like one of the reasons why I think a lot of people in my old businesses, you know, the TV media industries, they're not quite worried about their jobs. They're worried about not being invited to dinner parties. And there's nothing that would kill a dinner party quicker than someone saying that sex is real, you know? And you know, I say that in a jokey way, but the truth of it is actually a lot worse. The truth of it is your social circles are destroyed, you know, because not only do people, like, you phone people, they're rude to you on the phone, you try and explain that you know, what your beliefs are, doesn't matter. And then you start getting scared to phone people because this next person might reject you. So you become completely isolated, and I genuinely think that the ultimate aim of most trans activists in kind of separating someone like me from the herd is to try and make me kill myself. You know, that's what the ultimate. It's like a computer game, and that's how you win if the person kills themselves. You know, so it's a really nasty movement that's kind of weirdly tied up with dinner party manners. You know, I always think of the Hunger Games and the people who lived in the city, and they all look, you know, they're all dressed in high fashion designer stuff, and you know, they were eating buffets and stuff like this while the ordinary people were fighting for their lives, you know. But that's kind of what it's like now, you know, because ordinary people are fighting these battles every day, like the Darlington nurses, Sandy Peggy, another nurse. These women were expected to undress in front of a man, expected to, and told they were bigots because they didn't, you know, when they didn't want to. So it's you know, I think it's got a lot of comparisons with that, because a lot of the privileged people, let's call them the Hunger Games city people, it doesn't affect their lives at all. They'll never be to a shelter. They God willing won't get raped because they don't, like, you know, hang around in areas where that happens a lot and stuff like this. And it's just like, they just don't care. They don't care about these women, these men who are on the other end of society and whose lives are really impacted by things like this, you know?
So speaking of conversations, how, and I'm going to ask each of you this, I'll start with you first, Mr. Menno. How have conversations been since this ruling? How has engagement been, especially with the opposition? I'm guessing there's been aggression coming both your ways, but has there been like any more productive conversations, do you feel, now with this Supreme Court ruling taking place?
What I've seen is people are just digging in their heels and finding more stupid arguments to not accept the judgment. And what we're seeing is that all the arguments that our side has been banging on about for years were always dismissed, but now they're playing those arguments themselves. So when we said, hey, all this gender stuff is eroding our rights, they're like, no, that's not happening. And now, okay, sex means sex. Oh my God, our rights, help!
Yes.
similarly,
And
they're
Mr.
like,
Menno, you're touching on a point that I want us to get into later, but please continue.
so they also said that we were trying to change the law, and we weren't. We just wanted the law to be clarified. Because they were like, oh my God, you're trying to change the law. That's the worst thing in the world. And now they've lost, and they're like, we have to change the law. So it's just the level of insanity and the way people dig in their heels and how far they're willing to go. It just never ceases to amaze me. But there's one other point I wanted to highlight based on what Graham said earlier in your earlier question, but I'm happy to go back to that later on if you want. The problem, obviously, we've had Stonewall misrepresenting the law, but the reason it was so easy for them to misrepresent the law is because the law was really bad. Because we have two laws here. We have the Equality Act, which is from 2010, and we have the Gender Recognition Act, which is from 2004. So that preceded the Equality Act. And nobody knew how the two sort of interacted, because they all used the term sex and gender, but nobody really knew whether gender was just a synonym for sex or meant something else. And then in the Gender Recognition Act, it says that this changes a person's sex for all purposes. So that sounds kind of absolute. Whereas what we know from this judgment is it doesn't mean for all purposes, because it's like, you know, the equality, that's the...
Well, it doesn't change it for a prostate exam, right?
Well, and then the Equality Act basically goes and says, it only means something in a tiny part of life right there in that little corner.
And one thing that is kind of important that I would like to see both of you guys also touch on too, and you know, it can be just a quick thing, but the variation or the separation of sex from gender, because you're right, Mr. Menno, this used to be they used to be synonyms for each other. And now they're construed by the trans rights activists as completely separate things. And that causes some issues, at least here in this country.
I have a theory with that, not to interject there, and this is what I want us to get into in a moment with actually a UK individual who's been posting, is I feel the goal was to always bring the two back together once the infiltration had taken place, right? Let's say gender and sex are two different things, so that quote unquote trans women can infiltrate female, women's spaces, female spaces. Then suddenly now they're the same thing. We're complaining that we are real women.
No sense. That whole argument makes no sense. They always say, sex and gender is different. Then why do you want recognition as the sex that you are not? And this is where it's a very important point that Jane Clare Jones, a feminist in the UK, once made, and I've never heard anyone make it as clear as she's put it. No other civil rights group in history has ever sought to identify into a class of people that already exists within their own rights. And the whole idea, and this goes back to the 30s even, the first person, I think, to get legal recognition, a man as a woman, was I think 1930 with help of the Danish king, because, so oppressed. If you give someone legal recognition as the thing that they are the opposite of, you're asking for problems. So what we're seeing happening now across the world is just been waiting to happen. It's just taken a while to get to this point.
And I'm taking us a little bit out of order quick, but if you look at the screen, I put up some expos from this India Willoughby or whatever. This dude who I'm gonna read the post quicks for anyone who might just be listening, because this plays into the ultimate goal was the conflation of sex and gender, right? They never believed that it was separate. So the first post reads, "I have always been a woman. I remain a woman and I will die a woman. Let's test your bones 100 years from now. Fought hard to be me, suffered sacrifice, pain and abuse. No corrupt court or whiskery old fart judge who refused to hear any trans advocacy will ever take that away from me. They can't, because I am who I am. Woman, female. Is female not supposed to be sex, right? Gender and sex.
They've been gunning for the word female as much as they have for the word woman. ever since the first man said, "I'm a lady," and people took him serious. And I've documented this in a video I made called "The Trans Takeover of Womanhood," where I've got all these little scenes from documentaries from the 40s, from the 50s, from the 60s, from the 70s, where all these blokes are going, "I'm a real woman, I'm a lady, I'm female." So this whole hoo-ha about, oh, sex and gender are different, they always wanted their inner feelings to completely take over the reality of sex. That was from the get-go.
Can I make a point? Can I make a point about the sorry, what was the act in 2000? The Gender Recognition Act.
Yeah.
At the time the Gender Recognition Act was written, people thought they were helping a tiny amount of transsexuals. And when you talk about the way that the language is being bent and screwed around with, think of the difference between transsexual, which, you know, even if there's a lot of debate over the condition and what it is and what it involves and stuff, but we can all agree there used to be a word transsexual that people understood. It was basically people who had been through an operation and were no longer like had sexual organs. That's what we understood about transsexuals. There was a lot of sympathy. There was a lot of empathy for people who've gone through something that sounded so extreme and bizarre, you know. But what then happened after 2004 is they changed the word to transgender. And transgender doesn't mean anything. Transgender means, you know, like there's kids who think David Bowie was trans because he sometimes wore a woman's dress. Same with Kurt Cobain, you know? And it's like,
they argue Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc was a trans man, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly. I mean, it's just, and basically they spend all of their time trying to take away heroes for women from people like Joan of Arc, infiltrating into gay dating shows, such as is happening in the UK at the moment with a trans-identified woman on a gay dating show. And it's just a kind of chaos that's created by simply making up a phrase that doesn't, or a word that doesn't exist. Transgender, it's meaningless. It doesn't exist.
So, and Graham, just so our American audience knows, because I'm familiar with the show, but what is the name of that show so that they can look it up?
I Kissed a Boy.
It's I Kissed a Boy. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the lie is even in the title. My food is here, so I'm just gonna grab it from the guy and come back. I'm so sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
You're okay.
Eat and stream, absolutely. So, I want to jump on quickly just to the first part of India's his second post here.
But even this first one, right, where he says, there's a lie there. It's another very popular lie that they like to keep playing that card. It says, a judge who refused to hear any trans advocacy. Because they keep saying, oh, they didn't allow trans people in the court. That's not true. So the trans argument was made by the establishment, as in the Scottish ministers, right? We can't call it the Scottish government because apparently in the UK there can only be one government, and that's Westminster. So that's why they call the case for Women Scotland versus the Scottish ministers. But anyway, so they're up against the Scottish, you know, the biggest power in the land. And they're up against Amnesty International, not the UK one, international, that was making the case for trans. And still they're saying, our voices weren't heard. And that's because there's two blokes who, I think it was one bloke and one woman, and they both think they're the opposite. And they tried to intervene in the case and they were rejected, but that's because they applied as individuals. And the Supreme Court barely ever accepts an individual as an intervener because they can't justify that they can add something to the case that goes beyond their own personal interests. So that's very normal that individuals get rejected. But now they're like, oh, they got rejected because they're trans and there are trans people.
I want to ask you gentlemen this because, and I think Chris can agree with me on this, at least this is my experience. I remember years ago when transsexual and transgender were used, at least in America, for two different things. So transgender, when it first became a term, would be used to describe someone who was in a certain stage of becoming a transsexual. So they had they were living in appearance only in regards to clothing, growing out hair, all that stuff. Then transsexual was a reference to surgeries being done, especially the lower half if you were a trans woman. So I remember when that was a brief moment, a distinction when they used both terms, but now it is just all transgender. And on that note, I do want to, the second post here by India that he made, I do want to reference the first part and then bring up another image where he says biological woman has no definitive definition. Now, I'd ask this individual, if that is truly the case, if you truly believe that, then why do you want it defined on your ID? Because here we go. Look at this new passport arrived, and right there we have sex, an F for female, right? If sex and gender are different, then why do you need that F? Right?
I like also that he wiped out the date because he doesn't want anyone to know he's in his 60s. You know, that's one of my favorite.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh.
But but that's another thing. When Menno was saying earlier about badly written laws, that's another thing about the law. There's a crucial bit when it says that you may not discriminate against trans people. You know, whatever that means. It says it describes them as people who have done or are going to undergo gender transition, by which I think there's only one explanation, which is like surgery, right? But these blokes, these fucking jokers, they put on a dress and suddenly they're thinking about it. Yeah, I might do it one day. When we know that the truth is 93% of them don't do it. You know, why would you want to cut off your cock? And the other thing that really offends me about this is that there are actually people who suffer from these kinds of conditions. They do things that they desperately think they need to do, and they're being confused. We're not seeing the wood for the trees. You know, there's suddenly an entirely new cohort made up of young girls who hate themselves because of pornography, young men who see it as a fast track to a little bit of fame or women's prizes in sport, for instance, you know, and actual transsexuals, you know, some of whom are lovely, very reality based, and some of whom are just as insane as the cross dressers, you know. So that's a badly written law. The considering getting gender transition, that needs to be looked at because it is so vague. And it basically could apply to me. I could be.
Well, I am kind of curious what you guys think.
You know what I mean? I could just claim it, and no one would know the difference.
I'm kind of curious what you guys think about this, and just a quick little sidestep here. So I'm running for the Missouri House of Representatives. One of the things that I do plan on doing is making it illegal for people to change their sex on their birth certificates and their driver's license. So that it means their identification. And it sounds like that is perfectly legal in the UK, which it is also perfectly legal in the US to do that as well, in pretty much every state that I know of. I want to make that illegal. I can't think of any good reason why anyone really needs to do that. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, so again, different countries.
Do you want to go first on this?
Different countries approach this differently, right? So in the UK, you can change your passport. You can change the sex on your passport and your driver's license without having a so-called gender recognition certificate. In the Netherlands, it's the other way around. Before you can change any documents, you have to change your birth certificate. So here in the UK, we now have a problem where you have all these blokes running around with a document like this that says F. And again, it's interesting that they don't want a T for trans on there. They want an F, right? Because and like fuckface Willoughby, sorry, his you know, he says, oh, who knows what a woman is? What is the biological woman? Well, he knew exactly what he wanted to transition into, right? It's such a disingenuous argument. So
And he knew what a woman was when his wife gave birth to his children or his child.
Mhm.
You know,
So-
and he knew. You know what I mean? I mean, he transitioned, I think, into his late 40s or something like that. But like, you know, 50s, right? You know what I mean? He's a classic late stage transitioner who alienated his family through it. You know, and it's
Mr.
like,
Menno.
Sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to share something because Mr. Menno, when you said the T on the ID as well, I thought about the T adding that, right? In this case, for example, for trans woman, and I thought then it would be TF, which would be appropriate for the fuck. But sorry, I amuse myself too often, but that just popped in my head.
You know what? As a legislator, I might be okay with that.
But you know, Willoughby said the other day, here's something Willoughby said the other day that tells you everything you need to know about the man. Willoughby said the other day, I've been using toilets since I was 14. And if you've ever seen a photograph of Willoughby ever, right up until the age he transitioned, just a very normal looking bloke. It's just a normal looking bloke, you know, and yet he's trying to invent this past for himself where he was using women's toilets when he was dressed as a normal bloke at a time when people protected women, you know, not like now, you know. So he every time he breathes, he lies, you know. It's extraordinary. Any sound coming out of his mouth is a lie, you know.
But this whole thing that he's saying of "I was always a woman," that's not new. So that's what these men have been saying from the 1920s and the 1930s. Even April Ashley was a bloke in the UK who I think came from quite a working class, poor background, but then sort of reinvented himself into this very glamorous, very posh kind of high class lady. And
yes,
he was actually the first to go to court in the UK. So that was 1970. And that was the What is a Woman court case. So that was 1970. And he wanted to be legally female just so that he could lay claim to his ex-husband's fortune. So it wasn't even so much about I'm a woman, I'm a woman.
So it's not about everyone else's as rights as well, or so-called rights, right? It was a very okay.
But it's interesting because the law had to decide, is this man a woman or not? And on that basis, was he legally married to this man and entitled to his stuff? Now, interestingly, this man that he was married to was some kind of noble, you know, rich dude. Good catch, I guess. But he was a so-called AGP. So he wanted to become a woman and he liked wearing dresses, but he was too scared to go down that path. So then he married a bloke who had done it because that was his way to get close to that experience, if you like. So this is go on.
Sorry. So it's basically staying homosexual, but different, you know, more steps to it. I do want to mention quick that we are at 36 minutes. So if you gentlemen don't mind, I wanted to jump us to the next portion of this Supreme Court ruling, because a lot of people are just focused on the whole trans focus. But in this Supreme Court ruling, it's also about terms like lesbian and gay, right? And how they are defined. Now, I want to play a quick clip because Chris and I do love to respond to fools. And I want you gentlemen to respond to this gentleman right here and his opinion. And let's just get into it.
Court just legally redefined what a lesbian is. Alongside excluding trans people in the eyes of the law from the definition of a woman, it also redefined what a lesbian is. It did so by adopting extremely transphobic rhetoric concerning trans feminine lesbians. The court concluded that a lesbian must be assigned female at birth, or AFAB, and attracted or have a sexual orientation that favours other AFAB women. It went as far as once again stressing that women here can't include trans women. It said if it included trans women, it would render sexual orientation as meaningless. In order to make this point, it cited evidence from gender-critical groups like Sex Matters and the Lesbian Project. These fringe groups claim that trans inclusion is having a chilling effect on lesbian-only spaces. The vast majority of lesbians reject this claim, young lesbians in particular. In a recent study of young queer people aged 18 to 25, lesbians were actually the most likely to say that they supported trans people, 96% of them.
Queer,
lesbians are not going to let a court define who they are. And like the rest of the LGBTQIA+ community, we'll stand by our trans siblings in the fight ahead.
LGBTQI plus W
Well,
D S.
As the only straight man in this group, I believe that's known as a twink.
No. Twinks have to be pretty.
Correction. If you see the facial hair, if there's some chest hair in the, there might be an otter, right? Might be an otter.
Oh, an otter.
I used to be in my day.
I'll tell you what definitely applies. Soy boy, like that. All these people look like they're going to blow away in a wind, you know. And it's like no, men look out for women. Men look out for their lesbian sisters, you know. And if you look at any dating app, you'll see men all over them, not even pretending to be trans. You know what I mean? And it's just outrageous. And this guy, you know, he says young lesbians don't care. No, they don't care because men like you would report them if they cared. You know,
I got a question about that because they're polling young lesbians, right? But if men can identify as lesbians, then how is that poll valid? Because something tells me that some of the respondents to that poll are probably men identifying as women and then claiming to be lesbians. So I feel like there's a little bit of I don't know, the snake eating its own tail. Something's going on there that's just
well, and the other thing about it too is, you know, look at what was behind him in the room, the microphone that he was holding. It's a queer, I'm assuming, as fuck is what the AF means. And, you know, it's like the queer, so-called queer identity, you know, has, you know, basically come up against the homosexual identity. And so some of these folks have basically decided to divorce themselves from the homosexual identity in favor of the so-called queer identity. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. Now, I mean, you know, forget it. This is stupid. I mean, the guy is obviously a homosexual man, but he's been indoctrinated into thinking that this stuff is valid in some sort of way. And he even used the term trans siblings. How the hell?
I love it when they let
I'd like to hear you guys say something about it, but how the hell is a trans person a sibling of a gay person?
And then I have a question
for
you gentlemen. After you respond to Chris, I have a question for both of you gentlemen as well.
Right, now looking at that video, go on.
Yeah. No. You go ahead. I'll hold it.
A key thing that man is doing in that video is arguing that the legal recognition of homosexuality is transphobic.
Yeah.
So, and that's so dangerous about what he's doing, because that's part of the cultural gaslighting, and that's why so many younger ones now think that what he's saying is true. And this was a moment in the Supreme Court.
No, sorry, I'm delaying, so I should just remember to wait until you're done. Keep going, Menno.
This, for me, was the moment that made the most impact on me in the Supreme Court, when you have a judge simply saying that sexual orientation is a protected characteristic on the basis of sex. And it's like, it makes me emotional now just saying it. It's so mundane. It's so basic. It's so normal. Yeah. But for that to just be acknowledged, it really made me go like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it's such a sense of relief. And now you have all these people arguing it. So every time they're going trans, 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 I'm like, you're arguing against homosexuality. No, no one is forcing you to date a trans man. No, but
can I make a point about that? Can I make a point about that with the word queer? Yeah. That's what the word queer does. The word queer, because it's replaced the word gay amongst these kinds of people, it can stand for anything. You know, like there's a famous case in the UK, a very funny couple who are on a quiz show called Only Connect. And it's a man and a woman, but the woman has short hair and the man minces about, you know, in a like a gay guy in a 70s sitcom, you know. And the man is saying he's a woman and the woman is saying she's a man. Now, whatever, it's annoying and stupid and they're ridiculous. But this is what annoyed me. The woman posted an Instagram photograph of herself with a pair of earrings on. And the earrings, both of them said, so this is a straight woman who thinks she is entitled to use jewelry based on a slur of gay men. It's absolutely disgusting. Yeah. And what's been crazy about the last few years, I used to argue with the woman who presented it, I used to be friends with, and I lost her as a friend like everyone else, you know. But I used to say to her, do you not see how homophobic that is? Do you have no idea how homophobic that is? And her response every time was, oh, they're a lovely couple and all this shit, you know. It's like, no, they're being homophobic, you know. They're not, it's not a good thing to show young gay guys that a straight couple is a gay couple.
And one thing, you know, that I've seen in the Netherlands and Belgium is that they've now adopted the word queer as well. And I don't have that much of a relationship with that word because I grew up in the Netherlands, so it's not a word I ever came across. And I think in the States and the UK, it's
in the States here, it's for us older homosexual men, especially for a lot of older homosexual men, it's associated with a great deal of hate, violence. I mean, the schools, there was even a game in school called Smear the Queer back in the day. Yeah. So in certain areas. So, I mean, the word queer for a lot of older gay men especially has this visceral reaction to it. But on that note, I want to read this quick because this would be my last question for you gentlemen. But I want to read what I have up on the screen quick and then, you know, quickly ask my question of you guys. So the ruling confirms that the words gay and lesbian refer to same-sex sexual orientation and makes it absolutely clear that lesbians wishing to form associations of any size are lawfully entitled to exclude men, whether or not they possess a GRC, which is a gender recognition certificate. Now, here's the thing for me. I prefer homosexual man when I describe myself. If someone calls me gay, that's fine. And the reason why is I look at it this way. In this world where gay is politicized, I've heard gay described as having masculine energy. So by that, a butch lesbian is in that sense. Mind you, there was once a time when lesbian wasn't even a term. It was gay for everyone. But I prefer homosexual man at this point, because it's direct to the point, and I feel like terms like gay and lesbian are annoyingly politicized and have been just twisted. Now, that's just my take. So, like I said, I'm a homosexual man. Mr. Menno, I'm going to throw it to you as a homosexual man yourself. How do you feel about the terminology? Where are you in that?
I like gay, short and sweet, and to me, I use it in that it means a male homosexual. Homosexual is a bit of a mouthful. In the Netherlands, we would just say homo, and that's not a derogatory thing. That's just what it means. It's just gay, right? You're homo, and if you're a lesbienne. But I've started using homosexual again these last 5 years just to make the point. This is what it is, right? To really to go back to basics. So yeah, I say homosexual. I say gay. I never use queer. Because now I know that, one, it has that whole history of pain and oppression and discrimination and being kicked in the head. Two, it's too aligned with all that queer theory stuff, which is just completely postmodernist bunkerness. And three, queer now means lesbians have penises and gay men have vaginas. So no thanks. So there's 3 good reasons not to use the word queer. And again, it's so weird. Like I was talking to a bunch of Dutch guys, And one of them said he went to a queer bar and he used the English word queer. And I'm like, why do you use that word? And he's like, oh, well, that's what we use these days. And I'm like, but that word doesn't have a history in the Netherlands. So to me, that only shows how much of an imported idea this is. And then there's obviously slurs in the Netherlands for gay men and for lesbian. And this one for gay men, it doesn't make sense. I don't know where it comes from, but we say boat, which is the word for leg. You're a leg.
Oh, interesting.
But
All right.
we have two different words for leg. So we have the human leg, and then you have animal legs. So we use the word for an animal leg for a gay man. I don't know where it comes from. I basically asked this guy, would you use that as a word for that bar? Would you say it's a boat bar? And he's like, well, no, of course not.
So I got a question.
Yeah.
I got a question. So does that mean then that arm? Does that mean arm might mean lesbian? So if you say it's an arm and a leg, no, I'm just sorry. No, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. So
lesbian is pot, which is a pot.
You didn't ask me what my favorite term for homosexuals is. I like boys.
So I was just about to get to you with this.
Boys.
What was it?
Clutch pecker and pillow biter, or what is it?
Maybe cut that out. That didn't get as big a laugh as I was hoping. So,
I liked it, Graham. I'm in favor of pole smoker.
Pole smoker. Okay.
So, all right, one of my favorites. So, gentlemen, I got a quick story, and then we are almost at 50 minutes, and I know it's getting late for you, gentlemen, and so we'll work on wrapping up the segment. But my favorite, honestly, has been Fudge Packer, and here's why. So, for a while, I worked at a local store, a local shopping store. It's called Boscov's. It's more like in the northeastern of the United States. I'm in New York. Anyway, so I was working in 3 different departments. One of them was a candy department, right? And we actually made fudge there. We made fudge from scratch. So one day while I was training to learn how to do this, I made the fudge, and then I'm cutting it and then packaging it to be sold. And all I could think while I was packaging it was, I'm actually legitimately a fudge packer. And it just it's why it's one of my favorite terms, is because I can say that I actually once, one of my responsibilities at a job was to be a fudge packer.
Yeah. If you ever want to enjoy some of the dirtiest jokes ever written, get a thing called the Viz Profanosaurus. There's a comic over here, like for adults, called Viz, and it used to be great, but it's gone woke, so it's not worth getting anymore. But like the Profanosaurus is just a dictionary of rude terms, and it's one of it's where I first read Fanny like a wizard sleeve, and what was the other one? Oh yeah, like Bukake described as she came out of it looking like a plasterer's razor.
Let's keep YouTube standards in mind. I love having this conversation, but we will. Don't worry, I'm gonna throw this to Chris to edit certain things if he can. So we are at 51 minutes, gentlemen. I would love to have you both back on in the future, because you gentlemen are amazing. And Chris, thank you for introducing me to these two men. But I do want to go to have you guys first tell everyone where they can find. Well, wrap up your not final, but for this segment, your closing thoughts regarding this Supreme Court ruling, and then let our viewers know where they can find you on social media. So, Mr. Glinner, I'm going to start with you. What your final thoughts on it, and then where people can find out more about you.
Well, I'm strangled. My account is strangled on Twitter, but it is Glinner, at Glinner. And my Substack is called the Glinner Update. And basically, I've been writing for the last, I think 6 years, covering this issue, because most journalists weren't covering it. So those are the two places to find me. And yeah, I think this is the beginning of the end, this ruling, you know. And what I'm most proud of is that, like, you know, I said earlier that the British establishment sort of pooped me out, you know, but the people who have shown solidarity to me, ordinary women and girls and their husbands and brothers, and those people I'm just so proud to be associated with them, and I'm so proud that Turf Island once again has shown the way, you know. So yeah, that's my final thoughts.
All right, Mr. Menno.
As I said earlier, the good thing about this judgment is there's no beating around the bush anymore. That this is a judgment, this is what it means. So if they're against it, they're going to have to argue their case, and they're doing that openly. That, you know, you've got these blokes going to women's toilets with holding trans flags just to show, haha, we're doing it anyway, haha. So they're showing who they are. So it's there for everyone to see. No one can pretend that it's not happening anymore. Now, obviously, there's going to be some challenges to this judgment. You know, there's people wanting to take it to the European Convention of Human Rights or the European Court of Human Rights. That will take many years. So, as Graham said, it's the beginning of the end, but we still have years and years ahead of unpicking the legal mess that we're in. But more so, it's the damage that's been done to all these youngsters, in particular, that are completely caught up in this. Boys that think that they're girls that think that they're boys. It's going to take them a good few years to, well, come out of the cult-like aspect of it, and to be able to get to terms with what they've done to their bodies, or when they realize, wait a second, my parents did this to me, or they pushed me down this, or they supported this, what? And they're going to be the ones having to pick up the pieces with, you know, their body parts missing or lots of medical issues. And it's just, I think we haven't even seen the full extent of the damage that's been done. And I've just been doing quite a lot of research this week for, I'm working on a global overview of the pushback against puberty blockers around the world. So I'm looking at 14 different countries. And it's such a mixed bag in most countries. You know, finally, there's pushback happening. They're gaining some momentum. But when you read all the stories of how different clinics in the States, in Australia, in the Netherlands, in Chile, in Brazil, how they've not followed even the guidelines that they had, which were quite permissible, but even those they didn't follow, and all the data that's been suppressed. Like, sorry, I'm waffling a bit, but you're
passionate about this, and that's important because Mr. Menno, you're right. The law is one thing, right? Affirming a law and, you know, and reinforcing a law, that is one thing, but then you still have the culture to deal with after that, right? And that's what you're talking about. You're talking, because it's one thing to change a law or to reaffirm a law, right? To clarify law. But it is another to change hearts and minds and to help to reshape a culture. That's a whole different journey in and of itself. So there is a lot of work there. So absolutely, it's understandable. That's what you're speaking to.
I've seen these TRAs face to face, as Graham, as you have, when we've been to these women's events, and they're all surrounding you and shouting and being very intimidating. Now, some of them will simply move on. But then there are those others who are stuck with the physical consequences, the scars, and the emotional and the mental scars. And I don't know if there's a way back for them. And that really, I find that heartbreaking. But just last thing to say, I really want to express my gratitude and admiration for the women who brought the case, and also what they call the lesbian interveners. You know, it was the Lesbian Project, LGBT Alliance, and Scottish Lesbians. This was all done, you know, that they didn't get any money for this. It's all pro bono, even the legal help I think that they got. The arguments that they put together were so good. And again, these are just women, right? It's not like they're all legal experts. They had someone on board. Was it Karen Monahan? I'd never know how to pronounce the surname. Monahan. Anyway,
Monahan?
I think so. Karen Monahan. Anyway,
Yeah.
fantastic barrister, and they put together a whole document explaining what a lesbian is, and it's insane that it has to be done, but the way they did it was
Amazing.
so convincing that this was one of the things that swayed the judges, and we owe them a debt of gratitude. So thank you, ladies, if you're watching.
Thank you for
Menno,
what they
where
did.
can people find you?
Oh, on X, or if I can dead name it, Twitter.
Dead naming.
It's at Mr. Menno Tweets and Mr. just MR. And on YouTube, it's Mr. Menno. So again, MRMENNO. And I'll be there 24/7 going, trans women are men, trans men are women, non-binary is nonsense.
That is awesome. And again, I want to thank Chris for introducing me to you gentlemen. I want to thank you gentlemen for finding the time to come and join us. I know it's much later for you gentlemen in the UK. It's only 5:15 p.m. for me here in New York.
And I'm lucky. It's only 4:15 p.m.
Exactly.
for me.
So,
but yeah, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know that we've only had kind of an online sort of chat sort of relationship with each other, but you guys are both amazing, and I so appreciate you both for doing this. Graham, I hope that we'll get to meet each other once you come over to the United States. And
I'll come along
Menno,
to your campaign as well. I'd love to see you on the campaign trail.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I might be coming over to the UK in October, so for the LGBT Alliance meeting that they're having.
I don't think that's happening in October this year. I think it's April next year.
Oh, it might be that. All I know is just somebody
Listen,
told
and
me
just to
about
say,
it.
my battery's about to go. Just to,
But thank you guys. I really appreciate both of you so much, and thank you for doing this.
And to our guests and to our viewers, before you sign off, I know our guests sign off. Stay with us, because after this segment is done playing, Chris and I will be back live to respond to your comments that you've been making during this segment while it's been playing, and to play 2 more clips of hilarity and sadness regarding these topics that we've discussed during this segment. And we just hit that hour mark. So thank you, gentlemen, once again. God bless, and hopefully we'll have you back on in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless America.
Ciao.
All right. Okay, so we're back, Kevin.
Sorry, everyone. I rarely mute myself.
I was gonna say, I was like,
I rarely
did I
mute
do something
myself.
wrong here?
No, that is on me. I hope you all can hear me now in the comments. I saw that you could hear me. I rarely mute myself. I'm still being told that they can't. Can they hear Chris? Chris, can you speak and ask if they can hear you?
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Can you hear me?
All right. Well, hopefully we'll get some in the comments there.
Were you able to hear me, Kevin?
Daniel says he can hear everyone. All right. Thank you. I apologize, everyone, for the confusion with this. My mic and my headset that I usually wear gave out. I don't know why. They wouldn't reconnect while I was playing the segment. So I have an earbud in now. Luckily, that connected to my computer.
Are you able to hear me, Kevin?
I can hear you. So we are good. So everyone,
okay, good.
Before you all log off, because we're just going on about tech issues, Chris and I are going to get to those clips that we mentioned. So the real crazy thing is, one of the things I really loved about doing this stream is because we did focus on the sex and gender lie, as was discussed during the segment with our two amazing guests. We are going to go into that further. But before we do, I do want to. The first clip is actually going to be in regards to to J.K. Rowling. During that segment, I brought up J.K. Rowling's response to the UK Supreme Court ruling, which I just loved. This made me love her all the more. I mean, just look at that.
Oh, and
Amazing.
let's make sure, just for our viewers' sake, I mean, if you have lived under a rock or something like that, J.K. Rowling is the creator of the Harry Potter books and stuff like that. So, I mean, she knows Graham. So that is kind of the connection between the two. So, but anyway, so if you're familiar with Harry Potter, this is your lady right here.
Yep. And what we're going to do quick is we are going to play a clip that's in response to this specific post by Rowling right now. All right. So this is actually quite entertaining. It's a little bit of a long one, but I feel it's worth the watch. So check this out.
This is some serious Voldemort villain shit right here. J.K. Rowling is reveling in the fact that she helped the UK Supreme Court get to the point where they can define that trans women are not women legally, right? Like, she's just so proud of all the work that she's been doing over the last few years to stoke hatred and fear into the general public about a very small minority population that's already some of the most, like, misunderstood people on the earth. She's so happy about it. She's so happy about it. She's so cocky about getting the same royalties about whether or not you burn or read a Harry Potter book. So I think it has become our mission as the general public to make sure that every single thing that's Harry Potter related fails. That means posting in every single Harry Potter TV show update that comes out, in every single article, posting in the comments that trans rights are human rights, that trans women are women. It means not buying a ticket to Universal to go and see Harry Potter World. Like, if we could boycott Starbucks and McDonald's to the point where they saw massive dips in their sales and had to literally close a ton of stores because the general public just wasn't supporting them anymore, then I sure as hell think that the general public could just make sure that Harry Potter is no longer profitable for anyone that dares to do business with J.K. Rowling. Because that shit, that awful, disgusting shit, that has consequences.
Oh my God, Kevin!
So Chris, you know my response to that, my initial response to that stream, to that video is to bring this back up right there, right? All right, so
Right. So Kevin, man, I do always love how they like to point out that there's such a small percentage of the population. I don't know exactly what they're trying to accomplish by saying that, but they always like to say that. But I will say this much, though, for such a small percentage of the population, they sure as hell get a lot of traction in people's minds. Now, this guy, who's obviously an American, because I can tell from his accent, it's like, I think it's hilarious that he thinks that the general public is suddenly going to turn on Harry Potter. That's why I wanted to make it clear that J.K. Rowling was the Harry Potter creator, and that she knows one of our guests. Um, because the thing is like, I'm sorry, the world doesn't give a F
yeah.
about your little thing here, and they don't give an F about your hatred of Harry Potter just because J.K. Rowling is not in favor of your insanity. And so these leftists, because I'm sure that's what it is, these leftists, just don't seem to grasp the fact that this is not a hatred of people or anything like that. That's not at all what this is. This is just a desire by people like you and me, Kevin, who want to
Mhm.
return to reality.
Chris, this is this is interesting to me because let's say this guy was able to get this boycott going, right? Let's say it was successful, which honestly, from what we've seen of this show that's coming, it's going to fail anyways. I know that J.K. Rowling, she's actually suing to try to get all the rights back, from what I understand. But even if this boycott was successful, you're talking about a woman who already has enough money to where she is set, children are set, grandchildren are set, great grandchildren are probably set if the money is handled properly, right? So, what exactly? I just find it all the more entertaining. And I actually think that's one of the reasons, not the only reason, because I do believe that she genuinely cares about the assault on women's spaces and young girls' spaces. But I think also the fact that there is this cushioning there helps her with good reason to be able to speak up so loudly. And I want to thank her for that. But yeah, I'd love to know how exactly a boycott would actually do anything, but
Well, especially against the Harry Potter franchise. I mean, my God,
exactly.
it's like one of the most popular things on the planet Earth. And I mean, I'm sorry, I really don't think that people are going to give up their Harry Potter in favor of a bunch of crazy people who don't understand what their sex is.
Well, certainly not this individual right here. Not for him. Vinny is promoting himself as quite the Quidditch player in the comments. So maybe you'll get a chance to live up to that someday, Vinny. Daniel said, "Good effing luck to this guy." It's very entertaining indeed. But so with that, I just had to play this clip because I thought it was very entertaining when I found this clip. And I saw that it was in response to the specific image that we used during the segment with our UK friends, Mr. Menno and Glinner. So with that, though, I want to reference another image from our segment with the two gentlemen right here. So here we have India Willoughby, right? This man proudly putting this image forward, showing that where it says sex, there's an F for female. Now, I am so excited that we did this stream, Chris. And the reason why is because I've been saying again and again for a long time now that it was always the goal when it comes to those who push the trans ideology to conflate sex and gender. They played the game that sex and gender are two different things, right? But then, of course, they brought it back together. And the reason why they separated it was that so that they could infiltrate. And once they infiltrated, which they've done pretty successfully, they decided, okay, we're claiming it all. Because if that was not the goal, if that was not what they were doing, they would not be upset by this Supreme Court ruling in the UK, would they? So with that in mind, I actually want to go to our next clip, which comes from The Daily Show back when Trevor Noah was the host. And when he had a trans activist and athlete on, a gentleman that goes by Veronica Ivy, who just reinforced exactly what I just said. Now, you watch this clip by The Daily Show and tell me that the goal is not to bring back together gender and sex so that trans ideology can claim it all. So with that, here we go.
So the first is the very language of you were born and I'm not biological somehow. Like, I don't think I'm a cyborg. So like this idea that like, oh, you're not a biological woman. Well, I am a woman. That's a fact. I am female. So all my identity records, my racing license, my medical records all say female, right? And I'm pretty sure I made a biological stuff. So I'm a biological female as well. So this question of, do trans women have an advantage over cis women? We don't know. In fact, there's basically no.
We don't, honey, all right, my brother, my man, my brother, my man. All right, you see the cleverness there, right? I'm a biological being, not a cyborg, right? And then I have documentation that says I'm a woman, I'm female. That right there articulates perfectly what the goal always was. Let's separate gender and sex, say they're two different things, and then once we infiltrate, let's bring them back together and take it all and put women and men to the side.
Yeah, because I'm sorry, you're very clearly, I mean, extremely clearly not a female. And by the way, I do want to go back to Himdia, because I don't call him India, I call him Himdia. He hates me personally. Anyway, oh, I know it's a whole thing. Yeah. Himdia has blocked me on X. He does not like me. Because I decided to continue calling him Himdia every time he was talking, and so he doesn't like that. So that 60-some-year-old MFer can, kiss my gay butt. But anyway, but as far as this lunatic on the Daily Show is concerned, what you were showing, thank you for going back to Himdia. I did want to make that point, but as far as this lunatic on the Daily Show is concerned,
So the
I mean,
first very language of
Sorry.
you were.
You're okay. You're okay.
I don't want to listen
But
to all that. Great
the,
pause.
but this person is obviously a man, who's been on some hormones, and that's why his voice is a little higher and all that type of stuff, whatever.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's very clearly it's not a woman. And, I mean, I guess what I'm tired of, and you can let me know what your thoughts are, is like, I'm tired of these people who are clearly not women seeing themselves as women and then not understanding why the rest of us are like, no, that's not what you are. It's very clear that's not what you are. Maybe you've done some stuff to modify your body, but you're clearly not a woman. And the whole idea that he said, that we're not sure whether men have a biological advantage over women, that's bullshit. We know that men have an advantage, a physical advantage over women. Our lungs are bigger, our hearts are bigger, we have more muscles. Those hormones and all that type of crap that because I'm going to call him a he because that's what he is, those hormones and everything that he's taking do not reverse biology whatsoever. Might make him have a bit of a high voice, so he sounds like a weird chipmunk or some shit. But you know, and he's growing his hair out, and maybe doesn't have the facial hair because of the hormones or whatever. But he is still very much a man. He has the bigger heart, he has the bigger lungs, he has the more muscle mass, that sort of thing. He Do not give me this bullshit that someone like him does not have a physical advantage over women, and that is unfair to women.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is insane. It really is that disconnect from reality, and this individual especially. I mean, some people would want to say that this individual is just a moron. And the thing is, in a sense, yes, right, detached from reality, clearly, but the strategy is actually quite devious. this strategy that he is taking part in, right? That is quite devious. Like I said, the language he used, right? I am a biological being, right? That's what it's true. He is a biological being. I have documentation that says female. True. He does have that. So then, since I'm a biological being and I have documentation that says I'm female, I'm going to put them together. I am a biological female. And like I said, that is devious. That has been his goal. That has been the goal of the trans ideology all along. And I will stand by that. You cannot convince me otherwise. And this gentleman and that other gentleman from the UK with the identification, the passport, prove my point, in my opinion. And I would love for someone to try to prove me wrong.
Oh no, no one could prove you wrong. I mean, the simple fact is they are men. That's what they are. You know, and they're the weakest kind of men, Kevin. I mean, seriously, like they're the biggest loser men that could ever exist. You know, it's like I'm a man who feels like I need to pretend to be a woman. I mean, how disgusting and loser and low life is that? I mean, it really truly is. You know, and then on top of it, you're going to go ahead and try to compete against women in sports. And that's what this loser is trying to do. And it's like, you know, it's like you have an obvious biological advantage over these women, you know, and that's not to take anything away from women and how wonderful they can be at sport, because they definitely can be, but against each other, you know, this is an infiltrator. That's what he is. He's an infiltrator.
Absolutely, 100%. This man is an infiltrator, but like I said, is in my opinion one of the most dangerous infiltrators, right? Because he's being honest right here. When people tell you who they are, believe them. He's not even
Hmm.
trying that gender. What was it? I remember when it first started. And it was convincing at the time for a lot of people. It was it gender is between the ears, sex is between the legs. That was the idea. Then
Right.
you ultimately got to the point where if genitalia doesn't affirm gender, then why do you need to remove it? I mean, if it doesn't affirm anything, then why does it need to be removed? Right? How does
Well,
the removal of it
there's nothing.
affirm it?
There's nothing about the trans ideology that actually makes logical sense. I mean, really, when it gets down to it, you know, I mean, you need to think about it. I mean, these are people with a mental illness or a perversion. You know, I mean, some of them it's a mental illness, some of them it's a perversion. You know, and I bet you anything, this is an autogynephile. And for those of you out there who don't know what that is, an autogynephile is a straight man who gets off on thinking of himself as a woman. And I bet you anything that's what he is, because they tend to be the worst ones, you know.
Mhm.
And anyway, so, you know, I mean, seriously, people like this need to be shunned, ignored, whatever the case may be. You know, their viewpoints are not valid. They're sick in the head, is what I'm getting at here, folks.
And what I'm asking from our audience is, I know it's difficult. We live in a world that's going to put so much pressure on you. If we still have people from the UK watching, whether you're watching this after it's already aired or during live right now, this goes out to you as well. Is we do need to start being honest. We need to, I know it's different in the UK, but we do need to be real with it. So what I started doing was when I said man and woman, I started telling people, they'd be like, well, that's gender, not sex. I'd be like, well, when I say man and woman, I mean sex. And
Yep.
that's how I'm going to refer to it.
Yep.
And I stick by it. I stick 100% by it. I do not fluctuate from it. When I refer to a man or a woman, I'm referring to sex. That gender stuff, I mean, at one time, the only thing that was really gendered was language, right? different same word would have different spellings, whether it was reference to male or female. How you said it might slightly be different, but it was language it was wording that was gendered, not ourselves. Obviously, we referenced John Money. That sick individual is one of the leading individuals in regards to this. And that, I'm going to say it, that pedo, that child abuser, that monster. And if anyone listening takes issue with that, research John Money and you tell me what he did to those boys wasn't wrong. And the fact that from him, in part, stems this dangerous ideology that has damaged, hurt so many children, so many women, and so many people, destroyed so many families. I mean, that is the fruit from the poisonous tree, from the poisonous vine. There is nothing good from that, without question. So please, people, start speaking to truth. And don't be afraid. Even if you start small, right? Start having conversations with people in your life, right? I mean, you might hurt some feelings speaking truth, but it's what you got to do, because that's the only way we're really going to be able to successfully address this, is if we all just start speaking truth.
Well, and I think that a lot of people probably think it's like, oh, well, this isn't a big deal. This is like such a small number of people and whatever. But the thing is this is gaining traction, folks. This is gaining traction. We need to put a stop to everything trans, period.
Mhm.
It is gaining traction. And so, all of this stuff is going to eventually affect your own kids, your grandchildren, whatever the case may be. So, if you care about your family members and stuff like that, and I'm sure everybody does, then you'll want to work against this stuff, because this is a perversion of humanity. It's like, I mean, sure. For those of you out there who disagree with homosexuality or something like that, fine. Go right ahead. Disagree with homosexuality. I don't care. But the thing is, as a homosexual, Kevin, as a homosexual, guess what? We don't expect anything out of society. We just really want to just be left alone. These people want to affect your kids. They want to affect your grandchildren. They want to do all
It's
sorts of damage to them.
They don't want these people to have grandchildren, because if their kids are transitioned, especially at a young age, there's not going to be more children. We're
No,
dipping a little bit into those who think that we're overpopulated, but I don't want to go fully into that because there's so much to touch on here, and that's another point. To those individuals that Chris was talking to, even if you don't agree with homosexuality, right, with the fact that Chris and I are homosexual men, we are all under attack by this ideology that's being pushed. Homosexual, heterosexual, and here's why: because it is an attempt to not just blur the lines but destroy the lines. It is the dehumanizing. It is taken away the male and female identity to where it can just be, interchanged. Not even that. I really think the ultimate goal is the non-binary that gets pushed, in my personal opinion. That's why more increasingly you see, terms like queer, gender non-conforming, fluid, gender fluid, all that stuff, right? That is the ultimate goal. That is the future. Not even trans man or trans woman. I don't even think that's the end game. What the end game is for us to be nothing. For us to just be things that are easily manipulated, that are easily controlled. And that is my personal view on that.
I agree with you, Kevin. It's transhumanism. So if anyone is
Mhm.
not familiar with that, just go ahead and look up transhumanism. It's kind of an interesting topic, and that's where this stuff is going. And it's not a future that I think that any of us want for our family members, our children, or anything like that.
Exactly. And as I said, part of that goal is to not even have the children. I mean, people will call us call us like conspiracy theorists with that. I get that, but where so far have we been proven wrong? When we started noticing this switch and we were like, well, there's going to be an attack. I noticed it when same-sex marriage was actually legalized and got the protections. There were a lot of people who suddenly, within the quote-unquote community, they didn't like that. They didn't want that. They even were against that. Well, marriage this. Why would you want that, right? Then they slowly just started, going after everything. I remember to a point, like I said in the segment, I've heard gay, referred to, which used to refer to homosexual men. I've heard gay referred to as masculine attracted to the masculine energy, right? So masculine attracted to the masculine. Like I said, that's part of the reason why I prefer homosexual now. It's direct and to the point. But that is the goal. Chris, I know a lot of gay men out there, a lot of homosexual men have had this experience where you said, no, I would not be with a trans man. And you've been called transphobic. I remember the first time I got called transphobic for saying I would not be with a trans man. And basically I was described as a genitalist, right? Going back to Riley Dennis there, which the base mother, I know you remember Riley Dennis, she just commented, she said 100% agree that non-binary is the end game. So I got called that genitalist, right? And at the time I was with, well, my now husband. We were just, I believe, dating at the time, or recently engaged. Anyways, they said, so what if the man you're with, heaven forbid, something happened to him and he lost his genitalia, right? And I was like, well, if heaven forbid that did happen, he still wouldn't have a vagina, now would he? And that right there was so triggering has been so triggering for these individuals, because that is their goal. Their goal is for heterosexual, homosexual, they want it all to just be gone. They want to conquer it all. So again, if you are heterosexual out there and you are, you think Chris and I are wrong for being homosexual, that's fine. I'm not appealing to you on that level. I am appealing to you on the fact that we are both targets from this ideology. So you better wake up.
Yep, I totally agree, Kevin. That's what it is. I mean, get you know, put aside our differences. I guess is what I'm kind of saying to people. It's like, put aside our differences over homosexuality. We're all a target for this stuff. And, I mean, right now, probably homosexuals are the ones who are being affected by it the most, to a certain degree. But the thing is, this is they are coming for your kids. And I mean, I've done plenty of work on these issues in school districts and city councils and stuff like that, where we're trying to get these inappropriate books for kids removed. Now, here's the thing. Everybody likes to say, it's like, oh, well, you just want to remove the gay books. These aren't gay books. No, not at all. But the books that they're pushing will purport to be about homosexuality, but I can guarantee you every single one of them push this gender ideology and queer theory ideology bullshit.
And they're
And
instruction manuals more than they are books. This isn't Mother Goose. This isn't even the princess and the prince, but instead the prince and the prince. This is instructional books on this ideology.
it's how to become a person.
Is.
It's how to become a person like the freak that's up on the screen right now. That's what it is. They're instruction manuals on how to become that weirdo.
Yep. And one of our viewers right now, the based mother, has focused so much of her energy on that, which we want to thank you so much for doing that, because you are amazing. And we look forward to having you back on in the future as well. With that, we are at an hour and a half now. Thank you. We do hope that you enjoyed the segment. Please let us know what you think of our current style. Tech hiccups aside, me forgetting to unmute myself aside, what do you think of our intro? What did you think of us inserting the segment? I know it wasn't live, but we were live before it, and we did come back live after, and we did react to some stuff. So let us know what you think of this format in the comments. Also, if you're interested in being a guest, let us know. Or if you have an idea for this stream, let us know. Comment with that. We are here to have a conversation with you because that's the only way we're going to change this kind of thing happening in America. So with that, oh, also, by the way, our guests that we had on the segment, when I get a chance, the description will be updated with their social media information. So please go and follow them, and also follow us on social media as well. And here on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and of course, share. I'm Kevin. I'm saying God bless. Chris, I'll leave it to you right now.
God bless everyone, and thank you to Graham and Menno for coming on our show. Really appreciate that, and it was a wonderful show. So thank you.
Absolutely. Have a great night, everyone. And like I said, God bless.